1993 was the most dangerous year in Talladega Superspeedway history. That might come off as a bit of a surprise because the Talladega Superspeedway, it is a racetrack. It is a venue that is pure chaos. You see it almost every single time the NASCAR Cup Series unloads, races, and crashes at this huge Alabama Superspeedway. And you also see it with the legends and the spooky stories of the Talladega infield and various other parts of the racetrack. However, it's this 1993 season that sends the most shivers down NASCAR fans' spines. NRF Productions presents Talladega Frights, NASCAR's dangerous 1993 season. May 2nd, 1993, the NASCAR Cup Series garage assembled in Talladega, Alabama for the first battle of two in this 1993 season. It was a season where the jury was out on the man from Missouri. After sweeping the short track swing, Rusty Wallace was chasing history, looking to become just the sixth driver in the modern era to win 4 consecutive races. And in this race, Rusty had a really fast car and would find himself to be the leader of this genuine draft late in the race. Coincidentally, the driver chasing Wallace in the points was also the driver chasing Wallace in the draft. Dale Earnhardt was making it known to the industry that his 12th place finish in the championship, it was a fluke. With his big moment that said to the NASCAR industry and the competitors, hey, I'm the Intimidator and I'm back. That victory was at the Darlington Raceway to really kick off this rebound season. Looking to win his second race of the season and slingshot past Rusty Wallace. However, we would see with 7 laps to go, it would start drizzling. The rain kind of flirted with the area, and so the drivers were on the edge. And when Rusty and Dale were told over the radio, hey, there's rain coming in the area, and in that moment the blueprint changed because now they likely knew that this race was going to be over. Therefore, whoever made it back to the line first was likely going to be your winner. Both men put on a daring display of driver skill and ability to try to cross the line first. Dale Earnhardt would flip the script on Rusty Wallace, passing him and beating him to the line to officially win his second race of 1993, or so we thought. NASCAR in this situation could have chosen to take their ball and go home, disappointed that this race didn't prove to be the entertaining outcome they wanted. And it was that latter philosophy that made NASCAR determined to finish this race. They would choose to dry the track for a 2-lap shootout. Keep in mind, this was before the green-white checkered procedure was a thing, so such a finish was a novelty NASCAR fans hadn't really witnessed. You knew this race was going to end with an unexpected outcome. On the final lap, the Intimidator would be intimidated by the bright flash of yellow that passed him on the inside. In that moment, Ernie Irvan officially extended his streak of winning at least one NASCAR Cup Series race on a plate track to now 3 seasons in a row. So for Rusty Wallace, his streak was officially over. He had come up short of winning 4 consecutive victories. However, the Kodak cameras would flash for Rusty Wallace just as much as Ernie Irvan, the winner of this race. So why on earth would I say that Rusty Wallace didn't win this race? Well, in the mad dash to the finish, Wallace was hooked by Dale Jarrett. Rusty Wallace was officially in a vulnerable position, something Davey Allison coined as the worst feeling in the world. The nose of Wallace's car was pointed straight down. He barrel rolled to the finish with the grass ripping parts of sheet metal off the car. In that moment, NASCAR fans were struck with horror until Benny Parsons shouted with joy,
"Yeah, he's moving. I see him moving around in the car."
The most dominant driver of 1993, thus far, survived the violent crash reminiscent of his wreck back in February in the Daytona 500. As Rusty Wallace said after the race, his troubled tracks seemed to be Daytona and Talladega. Ultimately, this wreck was more consequential. Rusty Wallace was taken to the Birmingham hospital for a concussion and a broken left wrist. Fortunately, he would continue his bid at the 1993 championship, as Wallace would have an off week to recover before Sonoma. Definitely the main controversy of this race, though, was why NASCAR decided to end this on a 2-lap shootout. In quintessential fashion, NASCAR defended this decision to restart the race, reiterating their desire to end races with a green flag finish. Davey Allison, Mark Martin, and Dale Jarrett felt that NASCAR was put in a bind, yes. They also had a bad feeling in their gut that trouble was going to brew. Of course, though, the contrarian of the group was Michael Waltrip, claiming that as a driver, if you don't make those moves to get all that you can get, you're a sissy. Okay, so this May Talladega race had a chaotic 2-lap shootout, something that put their drivers in a vulnerable situation and almost sidelined the points leader due to an injury. However, this is only the beginning, because what would happen in July would spike the danger level to an unfortunately tragic level. To take his brand new helicopter for a spin, Davey Allison planned to fly to Talladega. His competitor and close friend Neil Bonnett's son, David, was preparing to make his Busch Series debut. Davey Allison would pass the first test by arriving on the Talladega site. This is unfortunately where things would go tragically wrong. Just inches away from touchdown, Allison struggled to land the plane. This was a helicopter he didn't have a lot of experience flying. As Allison attempted to turn the plane to the right, the plane climbed 25 feet into the air before making an abrupt left turn. The aircraft slammed into the ground pilot's side. Brett Farmer, who was the passenger, escaped unscathed. For the unconscious Davey Allison, medical workers desperately tried to save his life through surgery to relieve brain pressure. Unfortunately, the next day, Davey Allison was pronounced dead at 32. As you would expect, the July race, a couple weeks after Davey Allison's death, was pretty much a weekend full of mourning. For some NASCAR fans and drivers, they also had to cope with the temperatures during that weekend. Jeff Gordon drenched himself with water, Brett Bodine had to get some oxygen, and Dale Earnhardt, in his words, was fresh as a daisy. It was in that moment where Dale Earnhardt really looked at the NASCAR garage and said, yeah, maybe I can go another 20 years. And so it's no surprise that a Dale Earnhardt injected with confidence went out and won this race. However, for the 1993 Die Hard 500, it wasn't Dale Earnhardt that was in the spotlight, rather it was all of the dangerous crashes that really stole this show. Stanley Smith was one of the fan favorites. From nearby Chelsea, Alabama, he owned a drywall business in his hometown. People really knew who he was, so it was tragic when, on lap 70, there was a 5-car crash. Stanley Smith would end up being airlifted to a hospital in Birmingham, where he would be declared in very critical condition. This all happened when Smith's Chevrolet was slammed into by Richie Petty's Ford, which in fact left Smith unconscious Sunday night after the crash. Meanwhile, if you think things can't get even crazier, during that exact same crash, Jimmy Horton's Chevrolet flew completely out of the track. Fortunately, when the Talladega County Police arrived at the scene, Horton was uninjured. He was already well out of the car, and thank goodness, because this 5-car wreck definitely could have been a lot worse. It's completely remarkable that nobody died from this crash because, I'm just going to reiterate this point. A car completely flipped out of the racetrack itself. So the show must go on, including for Neil Bonnett, who was competing in his first NASCAR Winston Cup Series race since he unfortunately suffered a serious head injury in the 1990 Trans-South 500. Because even as he was driving the same car Dale Earnhardt drove to a second-place finish in the 1993 Daytona 500, on lap 132, Bonnett knocked down an entire stretch of the fence when his Chevrolet went out of control, flipped end over end in the tri-oval position of the racetrack, ultimately flying into the catch fence, which was the only barrier between Bonnett and 100,000 race fans. From the wreckage, 46-year-old Bonnett climbed out of his car with only a bruised arm. However, there were consequences from this flip as the race was stopped for 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 8 seconds while the fence had to be repaired, because ultimately you don't want a situation where an 8-year-old boy gets killed when car parts and tires go rogue, like when Richard Petty's car crashed in a drag race in 1965. At least in this case, Neil Bonnett survived and was well enough to go into the CBS booth to do some late race commentary for this same Talladega race that he went flipping into the catch fence. Something that's downright remarkable considering all the Dega demons in 1993. All the times where the cars would violently flip, go into the catch fence, or even completely out of the track itself. And obviously we cannot forget the unfortunate circumstance that happened with Davey Allison, where he lost his life in a plane crash in the Talladega infield. So with all that covered, I say without hesitancy that the 1993 season at Talladega was the most dangerous in NASCAR history. So if you guys really enjoyed this video, I've got 2 that you guys should click on immediately. You guys are going to enjoy those like you did this one, and other than that, this is Nathan for NRF Productions. Life's a beach, and then you drive.